Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans, about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm Larry Ziliak, your host, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. In today's episode, we have Kathleen Palmer with us. She's the Director of Content at Mission Milspouse. So, Kathleen, welcome to the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Thank you, Larry. I'm happy to be here.
Why don't we start with you just giving us a little overview of Mission Milspouse, what you all are about, and just fill us in on the great work that you do.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be here. Your place is amazing. Mission Milspouse is also formerly known as Army Wife Network. But over the past year and a half, we've transitioned and now are encompassing all branches of the military. And I'd say our main focus is we like to empower military spouses to do what they need to do in this world. So whether that's conquer adversity, learn new skills or get jobs or whatever they want to do, we want to foster that confidence for them and help them. So we provide kind of a trio of things. We have resources and trainings that we're working on. And then we also do podcasts where we interview military spouses and organizations that help military spouses so we can make them more aware of what's out there for them. And then finally, we have a Facebook, Instagram, and we have a full blog where we have 32 bloggers that blog for us.
Wow.
Yeah, it's become quite a big thing. And so they're military spouses, and then there are also some experts in the military spouse community like Red Cross, the Hiring Our Heroes, USA. We have USAA is one of our sponsors, and they also write for us, TRICARE, DHA. So we have a wide variety. And then on the other side, the experience side, we have bloggers from all walks of life, retired, young new spouses, which they're always fun to read their blogs. So that's kind of what we do. We have a wide range of ways spouses can engage with our community and just help them become better and thrive and do not feel alone. We like to say we got your six. That's kind of a military expression, but we really do want other spouses to feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And this is a national organization.
Yes, it actually is. Yeah. So our core team has 25 people. We are stationed from Germany to Hawaii to Alaska. We're everywhere. And we come together, once a month or even more than that for our meetings. And then the content is new every day. And we just keep up with what different places need. We're looking to expand a little bit and hopefully do some in-person trainings and things like that. So, yeah, but we are everywhere there's a military base.
Okay. And on the bases, is it like chapters of the organization?
Well, they're all online. So yes, okay. We do have a section called Embrace Your Base, and we are currently transitioning it to Air Force and Navy and Marine because we were focused on Army. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a work in progress right now, but hopefully in the next year or so, we'll be able to have that. So we don't have a physical office on every base.
Okay.
But we are actually, trying to get ambassadors and representation in each base. So right now, everything is online, which you can access.
And it's been a while since I was in the Air Force, but I do remember there were Officers' Wives Club,
mm-hmm.
and then there was Enlisted Wives Club.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the audience you're trying to reach, or is that somehow work in with what you do, or how does those, because I know those exist on bases.
Oh, they do still. Most of them have merged and they no longer separate, officer enlisted. And now they've actually expanded to incorporate community members. So with the addition of the Space Force now, so we have another branch to put into that.
Can't forget them.
Right. So we actually try to engage all different levels there. So our ideal military spouse isn't necessarily a member of those clubs, although many of them are. We want that spouse that just joined the military and they're like, what's this acronym mean? And I feel lost and alone and I just want an identity or a group to go to. And when you go onto our site and you see we have something for everybody on there and we will connect with you. And there's a lot of organizations that mentor military spouses,
mm-hmm.
but what do we find about this group of military spouses, these ones coming in,
mm-hmm.
they are so savvy with technology and they're very comfortable being online.
Yeah.
So we're trying to meet them where they're at. And so they can very easily get answers to their questions or read a blog and I'm not alone. And all our bloggers are very interactive. You can email them, and we've had quite a few, step up and do that. So I think our ideal spouse isn't really a set one, but we want to capture the new ones, the ones in the middle who are like, oh, can this life please be over at this point? And then the ones at the end who are looking towards retirement and saying, what's next? What do I want to do next? So we don't offer employment services, but we do. I feel like we offer support, confidence, and just a little moxie to kind of get you where you need to go.
Sure.
So,
and I noticed too that the terminology has changed over the years, and it's no longer wives club; it's spouse club.
Absolutely.
And this really hit home for me at the where we met, which was the help me out.
The Greater Washington Spouses Club.
Yeah. Military Spouses Club of Greater Washington. I talked to a gentleman who was a military spouse in the sense that his wife is the Secretary of the Army.
Yes.
I didn't realize it until they welcomed him as a VIP guest. But are you seeing more men online with your organization, or is that just kind of rare?
It's interesting because you would think in this day and age it would be more common. We do have a male spouse on our board of directors, and then we also have one or two male spouse bloggers, I believe, at least we've had in the past. But I think even at the spouses club level, I remember being overseas in Germany, and I saw a lot more military spouses that were male over there because being overseas, you're so close together, and so that's really it, all you have. So I saw more participation there. The one here, the Greater Army Spouses Club that I met you at, that's a huge entity. And then the Navy and the Air Force also have their own clubs at that level as well. And I think that one of the Air Force spouses says they have more men, more of more gender inclusive at their functions. So I think at the last one we had 2 or 3 male spouses.
Yeah, we had a chef here, one of our volunteer chefs, whose wife was an Air Force colonel. And he was a civilian the whole time. And he was we miss him. Art, we miss you. Great chef.
Well, we have to do a better job of incorporating things in there. And one of the things is we went from Army Wife Network, obviously, to change it. Even in the Army world, which I can speak to more than the vast military, is that we have an Army Wife Handbook that was so outdated, and now it has been updated in the last 2 years, and it is now the Army Spouse Handbook, and it is definitely more inclusive and, with all the titles and, the partner marriages and different things. I mean, it's a different world than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get a look at the old one? Was it pretty hysterical, or?
Well, it's funny you say that because they used to give that as a gift, like really funny, like, hey, you're a new Army wife, here you go. And it is kind of hysterical now, but when you take that aside, like, about the wearing the white gloves and we don't do those formal things as much anymore, but I actually got to know the writers of the book because they were looking to update. So they reached out to some spouses, and so we all served on a panel and we helped them update the book. And it's really a wonderful resource guide now, because I think one of the things we are going away from after 20 years of war that we're starting to come back to is that we went away from a lot of the flagpole traditions, the garrison traditions, the coffees, the teas, the New Year's receptions, all the Army traditions I can speak to. And I think kind of coming back to it, this new generation spouses, I mean, they're asking questions all over the internet about what do I wear to this and what do I do to that. So sometimes it's a good guideline to have.
Sure. I mean, it's hard to be a military spouse, especially if you're young and, you're 20 years old and you get married and your husband or your wife is relatively new officer, a lieutenant or second lieutenant, and all of a sudden you're on a military base and your spouse doesn't have that hard of a time because there's a whole line of people telling him or her what to do, but nobody's there to tell you what to do or how to do anything. You got to navigate the BX. You got to navigate the base. You got to get a bunch of permits. You got to do all sorts of stuff. And I'll tell you, I knew quite a few spouses that were pretty lost when they first got to an installation. And that handbook sounds like it'd be pretty useful.
It's pretty useful for a lot of, things that you don't know about the military. The other thing, you hit the nail right on the head, is like when the soldier, I'll use Army references, but when the soldier goes to a new unit or a new base, they actually have a built-in network. Their job is there. They all of a sudden have coworkers and people, but the spouse is like, okay, what, you're kind of left out in the cold. And I hear that as a common complaint. Like, they get there and their spouse gets pulled into this huge new world and is comfortable, and they're left out in the cold. So that was a really good observation. I think that part has not changed.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it better. I think the new Chief of Staff of the Army, General George, is trying to pull in installation apps where you can have all that information at your fingertips and things. But we're in a human business. And so it comes down to human relationships. And it's important for people not to feel lost and alone. And hopefully that's what our organization strives to do. But I think, like, the power of volunteering, sometimes people don't want to volunteer anymore. And, how do you get around that? How do you get people to volunteer?
Well, we don't have a hard ask. This is Wounded Warriors we're helping here.
Right.
So we're pretty fortunate from that standpoint. But we have every flavor of volunteer you can imagine. We have people who volunteer a few times and then we don't see them again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, COVID was hard.
Yeah.
We had a lot of volunteers, and many of our volunteers are retired, which put them in a high-risk group for
Right.
COVID, and they just evaporated away. So for guest stay coordinators here that work directly with the families to organize their stay, pre-COVID, we had 13, 14. Now we've got 5. And they're slowly coming back, but it's hard. And the key is we have an amazing volunteer director, Faith, and she can find something for everybody to do. And it's all about what your skills are, how much time you have, and what you want to do to help us. You may have to do some things that we need done, but by and large, she's very good at finding that fit, and that's really what it's all about. And recognizing that you might get somebody who wants to volunteer every week.
Mm-hmm.
The next volunteer might be once a month, and then we have a volunteer who's amazing, and she comes once a year to set up the Christmas trees and to take them down.
Sounds a wonderful job.
She puts 11 Christmas trees in this house, and we have 5 at Penn Fed, and it's a 3-day process to put them up and to take them down, and we don't see her for the rest of the year.
Well, your director sounds a lot like our executive director, Dr. Sharita Knobloch, and she's the one who's kind of, brainstormed this whole transition to encompass all the military. And it is true. And she always does say that, like, everybody can do something and always, do a little piece of it. And we have a machine work, and we have 25 core spouses that are all volunteers, all military spouses that work from all different time zones. And somehow she brings it all together. But she always brings up a good point. Everybody's got their own skill set. Like, I like to say, I kind of function like a raccoon on meth at times, not just loading the dishwasher, but, in a lot of areas of my life. And then we've got these people that have these really great marketing skills and really, good organizational skills. And so it all seems to come together. And when you bring military spouses together, that's what we're all about. You bring them together, and you could run a small country with the skill sets that are in all these military spouses. So I'm really blessed to be part of our organization. We'd like to expand and do more, but bringing attention to organizations like yours, which we'll do next month, and then also, just seeing where we can tell our listeners, our viewers, our readers, where they can go and jump in too.
Yeah. To help other organizations.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And I think you really, at some point, and I'm going to be unpopular for saying this, but I do say this a lot, is that sometimes in a marriage, there's only room for one alpha dog. There's only room for one big job. And so sometimes, spouses have to take a step back and absorb that, and then maybe find other ways to get in there. And there are couples that can do it all.
Mm-hmm.
They can have big careers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the most part, military spouses really want to use their skills in an effective, meaningful way. And I think in Mission Milspouse, we try to provide those opportunities, and we try to provide information about where they can go do that. And hopefully everyone can feel good about themselves at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it's all about.
Oh, for sure. Volunteering is amazing. We get more out of it than we give, for sure. And being able to direct your spouses to organizations where they can give back and contribute is really good. It's really special because the organizations need help, and it's just a great way to volunteer and feel good about what you're doing. I'm also curious, do you do any lobbying? In particular, one of the things that I hear the most is spouses, professional spouses, that because of orders and their spouse transfers, their licenses are not transferable between states, or it's just so much hassle to get your license, whatever professional license you might have, up to speed in a new state. Do you all do any lobbying on that, or is that just not a function of the organization?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not a particular function of our organization, but we do interview and highlight people who have fought that, and like we do podcasts about them or articles about them, and that actually is changing. I mean, NFMA and some other organizations have really lobbied Congress hard, and those licenses now, there's a Reciprocity Act. Organizations like MSEC, they do an educational Reciprocity Act among the states, the Interstate Compact. So all of those things that come about to help spouses and help families of spouses, it comes from the grassroots. And so we try to find those people that are leading the charge, and we try to highlight them so they can get help, support.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at, and I encourage all of you to go to missionmilspouse.org is our website. And if you click on podcast, I mean, we have over, I don't even know what our number is at now for podcasts, but it's ginormous. And we've been doing it. We're the longest running podcast for an Army spouse or military spouse. And you can find almost everybody that we have interviewed in the past probably 10 years. And really, some of the shakers and changers that, that we have, interviewed or that have been on our show, they're still doing it out there for us. So I see even more changes coming. But yeah, that's a really good point, because all those things, we don't technically lobby, but we do try to get people where they need to go to get to those causes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the true benefits about podcasting is that even though you recorded something 2 years ago, the content itself is still relevant.
Absolutely.
You can say, hey, if you want to learn more about this, listen to that.
Absolutely.
And having that archive is just got to be so valuable to spouses. One of the things that I like to talk to veterans about is today's veteran is so different than previous conflicts, and they don't join the American Legion or the VFW. They're finding that same tribe online, like you. It's a great platform because you don't have to be anywhere near each other. You can be anywhere in the world, connect, and get what you need online. And today's veteran doesn't see a reason to join those brick and mortar organizations. And what I try to say to them is that, look, I know you don't want to go and sit and listen to some guy tell stories from World War II, and they're all shouting at each other because none of them can hear. And I get that you don't want to do that, but every time you turn on the TV and you see Congress talking about veterans issues, it's the American Legion, the VFW, the disabled American veterans who are sitting at that table and lobbying on your behalf. And that's why I encourage them to join these organizations, pay the dues, support the lobbying. You don't have to set foot in the bar itself. And the same thing, I think, goes for your organization. Military spouses, any military spouse out there listening, really does need to go to missionmilspouse.org and join, sign up, use your resources.
Absolutely. We have a newsletter called the Sit Rep that goes out, and that kind of lists all the different things that, are going on that month, or that, we can listen to. But I would agree with you. I also would like to go back to your brick and mortar statement, because we call it IRL, in real life, in our platform. And I think we need to get back. It's great to have these online resources. It's great to have the support out there, everywhere. But I think there's nothing that will substitute sitting at a table with people who have fought your fight and walked your walk, and being able to share in real life, or brick and mortar, as you said. So I think that is a big disconnect, that we have to try to close that gap.
Well, is there any way, have you looked at ways in which you can transfer your content to the existing spouse networks that are on bases around.
Larry, were you sitting in on our executive meeting? Because I promise you, we have just been talking about this very thing. So that's what we're really trying to look at, is how we can actually start taking the content to different bases. And so hopefully as we grow, that mission can grow too, because I think at our core, on our team of directors, we all feel what you just said, how you have to appreciate those who have come before you that fight, that are bringing the benefits to you, and you have to continue to give back. And I don't think you can do that on the web totally, because you really do have to sit with people and look at them and hear their stories. It's very important, I think. So yeah, it's a great point. And we are at Mission Milspouse, we are totally working on trying to bring our content and our resources in real life in some way. So stay tuned.
I don't think that's as hard as what people may think it is, because I think that these organizations are starving for content, that they don't want to come together for that monthly meeting and talk about the same thing they talked about at the last 2 monthly meetings.
Right.
And if they had 1 or 2 members who were part of your organization or were involved to a level where they were in tune with all your content and can transfer it down to that organization, I think they'd have fresh content every month. And especially if they could play a podcast or a portion of a podcast or whatever's on YouTube, or a particular somebody they listen to in your podcast, then go find a YouTube interview with that same person who's lobbying for these professional licenses or something like that, and then play it for their chapter or whatever. I just don't think it's that hard of a thing.
I don't either. I think we just have to all think outside the box and have people willing to jump in and take it at different places. We do a lot of book authors as well. So I just interviewed Marcus Brotherington. He wrote several. He's working on. I think it's Gary Sinise's biography he wrote. But so we have an author of that who writes military fiction, historical fiction, and then we also interview quite a bit of military spouse authors as well who have written books. Right. And so even what you were saying, hey, let's sit around and talk about this book or this article or whatever. I think that's a really great way to break that gap. So stay tuned, Larry. Stay tuned. We're working on it. You are on the ball.
Well, once you get to that point, we'll have you back and you can tell us all about that new program. We'll just say, okay, whenever it launches, you let me know, and we're going to do another episode for sure.
I would love it. And I will also, to the Mission Milspouse listeners who are in the DC Nova area, I want you to also, I don't know if you have show notes, but
yeah, we can put it in there.
Yeah, at willingwarriors.org or .com?
.org.
And so we can put that in there, and you can see ways you can in real life volunteer as well if you're listening, or even on staff. I know we have a few staffers out here. So, okay. But I appreciate you having me out here today.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. It's just great to learn more about Mission Milspouse. Once again, the webpage is www.missionmilspouse.org. Go there today. And is there a donate button on there?
There is. We're a 5013C, so we do have the donate button. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at Kathleen, Kathleen, at missionmilspouse.org, and I can answer any questions or point you in whatever direction you need to go.
Great. Well, visit the webpage. Donate if you can. It's a great organization. They need help like every other 501c3. It's a struggle, trust me. But listen, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And for our listeners, we will have another episode next Monday morning at 5 a.m. If you have any questions or any suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org. Until then, thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.